Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who got nervous about a high school reunion. But the truth is, the idea had been gnawing at me for months, like a dog worrying a bone. When the email invite first hit my inbox, Westfield High, class of 2010 reunion, my stomach dropped. 10 years gone just like that. 10 years since I swore I'd never step foot in that gymnasium again. But I RSVP'd yes. Not because I wanted to catch up with anyone. Not because I missed them. But because I wanted to walk into that room and prove I wasn't the same girl they broke down piece by piece. Back then, I was the big one. At 17, I weighed nearly 320 pounds, and that number seemed to give everyone license to treat me however they wanted. Every joke, every snicker in the hallway, every moo sound when I walked past a group of boys, yeah, that stuck. But nothing burned worse than the day in the cafeteria when Tara Brighton, blonde cheerleader, always loud enough for everyone to hear, stood on a bench and called me a land whale. The whole room laughed. Even the teachers didn't stop it. I went home, locked myself in the bathroom, and cried until my face was raw. I swore that day, one day, I'd show them. And now, here I was, 10 years later, tearing open Amazon packages with trembling hands, Spanx, hair extensions, press-on nails. I had spent the last year on a drug that was supposed to change everything. The commercials called it a miracle. The doctors called it semaglutide. But people on Reddit and TikTok had another name. The cheat code. I'll be honest. I was terrified of needles. I swore I'd never take shortcuts like that. But after years of losing and gaining the same 40 pounds, I gave in. And for the first time in my life, the weight actually stayed off. By June, I was down 85 pounds. My cheekbones looked sharp enough to cut glass. My collarbone stuck out like I'd borrowed it from someone else's body. For the first time, I could put on a dress and not cry. The night of the reunion, I parked outside Westfield High and stared at the building that had once been my personal hell. I could see the glowing windows of the gym, hear the faint thump of music. My palms were sweating on the steering wheel. "Get it together, Lila," I muttered. "You didn't go through all this for nothing." I pulled down the mirror, touched up my lipstick, and stepped out of the car. My heels clicked against the pavement, loud and confident even if I wasn't. The moment I pushed open the gym doors, I felt the shift. Heads turned, mouths fell open. No joke. Tara Brighton's jaw actually dropped. "Lila," she gasped, clutching her necklace like she'd seen a ghost. "Still on Earth?" I smiled, slow and sweet, and said, "Oh no, honey. I fly now." Her fake laugh was everything I wanted to hear, and suddenly, people who hadn't looked twice at me in high school swarmed. The same ones who called me names, who whispered behind my back. They wanted pictures, hugs, my Instagram handle. That's when I saw Ryan Blake, my old crush, football captain, the guy I once wrote 10 pages about in my diary, even though he never so much as glanced my way. He looked good, real good. Crisp shirt, close-cropped hair, that same smirk that used to make half the cheer squad melt. "Wow," he said, eyes raking me up and down as he handed me a drink. You're a whole different person." "I burned the old version," I replied. And just like that, we slipped into conversation. Easy, familiar, almost too familiar. By the end of the night, I was in his loft downtown. Minimalist furniture, abstract art on the walls, one of those fancy coffee machines that looked like a spaceship. We were kissing, laughing, pulling at each other's clothes, when suddenly my stomach clenched like a fist. The room spun. I barely had time to shove him off before I collapsed on the floor, retching so hard I thought my insides were tearing apart. The last thing I saw was Ryan's horrified face as he grabbed his phone, shouting into it for 911. I woke up in the ER with an IV in my arm. A nurse told me it was dehydration, malnutrition, side effects of the injections. And then I heard a voice next to me. Guess we've got more in common than I thought. It was Ryan. On the stretcher beside me, hooked up to fluids, his shirt half open. Turns out he'd been using the same drug, abusing it, just like me. I threw up 3 times last week from eating a salad, he said with a weak laugh. But hey, anything to impress, right? We both laughed, embarrassed but relieved. We tried to quit. We really did. But the weight crept back fast, like it had just been hiding behind the curtains, waiting for us. And we couldn't handle it. That's when we found the group. A hidden corner of Reddit. Invite only. They called themselves the Shining Circle. People there weren't just using the drug. They were forging prescriptions, trading black market versions, microdosing in secret. Ryan got us in. The first package came in a plain black box. No return address. No instructions except 1 shot per week. No refunds. And it worked. For a while. No nausea. No dehydration. We looked better than ever. My Instagram started to blow up. Ryan became obsessed. Skipping work. Weighing himself 3 times a day, dragging me into bed only to stop and check his reflection mid-kiss. But then came the deaths. A girl on the forum collapsed in a tanning salon. Heart failure. Forensics found amphetamines mixed into her vial. I panicked. Ryan didn't. She was probably on other stuff, he shrugged. People exaggerate. But then he started seeing things, hearing voices. His heart raced for no reason. One day, he collapsed on the treadmill. That's when I learned he hadn't just been using. He'd been doubling his doses. And selling. The username behind it all? Ghost Newton. The last time I saw Ryan, we fought. I begged him to stop. He screamed that I didn't understand, that he'd rather die than go back to being ordinary. He stormed out. A week later, he disappeared. His apartment was spotless, like he'd wiped himself off the map. The only thing left was a blood-stained towel and an empty crypto wallet. The cops questioned me. I said maybe he ran off with some model. But inside, I knew the truth. Ghost Newton had gotten to him. For months, I spiraled. I ate like I was trying to fill the emptiness he left. Ice cream, fried chicken, anything to make me feel less hollow. My body swelled, fast and angry. And then, nearly a year later, I saw him again. Not on the news, not in a graveyard. At a resort in Florida. I was at the buffet line when I spotted him, waddling through the crowd in a sweat-soaked linen shirt, carrying a tray stacked with chocolate donuts. He was enormous, almost unrecognizable, but it was him. "Lila," he said out of breath, his eyes wide. We just stared at each other across the room. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Finally, he shuffled closer, lifted the tray, and said with a crooked smile, "Still shining, huh?" I gave a weak smile. He laughed, handed me a donut, and said, "Me too." We sat by the pool that afternoon, eating in silence. He told me he faked his disappearance, set up the blood, the empty wallet, everything. He'd gone underground when some members of the circle got exposed. One girl, he said, had literally melted, skin necrosis, her body breaking down from the inside. I stared at him, horrified. He just shrugged, frosting smeared on his lips. "Maybe this is who we were always meant to be," he said, patting his massive stomach. Fat and full of lies. The sun was hot on my skin. I looked down at my own body, bloated, stretched, raw with shame. And for the first time in years, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because maybe he was right. Maybe this was the only truth left. I never thought I'd look back at my middle school years and realize that the best friend I made back then would turn into my worst nightmare later in life. I met Lena Carter when I was 12. She was funny, bold, and a little reckless, the kind of girl everyone wanted to sit with at lunch. I was quieter, more reserved. But somehow we clicked. By high school, we were inseparable. She called me her sister, and for a long time I believed it. We shared secrets, clothes, even our dreams. In my early 20s, my health changed. I was diagnosed with a condition that left me partially disabled. I used a wheelchair most of the time, but at home, when I didn't feel like straining, I'd crawl or slide around. It wasn't glamorous, but I managed. I adapted, and I tried to keep my independence no matter what. Lena stuck around, or at least I thought she did. She'd always say things like, "Girl, you and me against the world. Don't matter what happens, I've got you." And I believed her. So when Lena told me one evening over takeout that she and her boyfriend needed a place to stay, I didn't even hesitate. "Of course you can move in," I said without thinking. "Your family." But looking back, I should have thought harder. The day they moved in, I made one request. Just one. "Lena, please," I told her as we carried boxes into the house. "No big dogs in here. I love animals, you know I do. But if a dog knocks me over when I'm not in the chair or comes flying down the stairs, it could be bad. Really bad." She waved her hand and smiled. "Relax. I would never do that to you. You know me. No dogs, I promise." I trusted her. God, I was stupid. 3 weeks later, they brought home a pit bull. Not a trained one, not a calm one. No, this thing was a hyper, unneutered, wild rocket of a dog with more energy than a tornado. I like dogs, don't get me wrong. But this wasn't just a little energetic. This dog was chaos on 4 legs. "Lena," I said the first night, watching the dog tear through the hallway, jumping onto couches and knocking over cups. She shrugged, holding a glass of wine like nothing was wrong. "She's sweet, though. She'll calm down. Don't worry." Her boyfriend laughed, tossing the dog a toy. "She's just a puppy, she'll grow out of it." But she didn't. Every time I left my wheelchair to slide across the floor, that dog was there, jumping, licking, pushing. She had no sense of boundaries, no training, nothing. And Lena's idea of discipline was shouting, "Down! Stop!" from across the room while sipping coffee. One morning changed everything. I was late for class and crawled out to the backyard where I kept my wheelchair under the wooden deck. The smell hit me before I saw it. My stomach dropped. The chair was soaked, and not with water. Dog piss, everywhere, soaked into the cushion, dripping off the wheels. I froze, just staring. For a second, I couldn't even breathe. That wheelchair wasn't just a chair. It was my legs, my freedom, and now it was drenched in urine. "Lena!" I shouted up toward the deck. She appeared, sleepy-eyed, coffee in hand. "What's up?" "Your dog pissed all over my chair." My voice cracked with rage. She blinked. "Really?" "Damn. I didn't notice. Sorry." That was it. Sorry. No urgency, no guilt, no, "Let me help you clean it." Just nothing. So I dragged myself through the grass, grabbed the hose, and washed it off while she watched. I climbed into it still wet, soaking myself in dog urine just to get to class. The humiliation burned so deep I couldn't even cry. Things spiraled from there. Trash started piling up. Lena and her boyfriend never took it out, and the dog loved tearing into bags. One night I came home and a bag had burst on the stairs. Liquids and scraps of food had leaked down the hallway leading to my room. I stepped right into it. The smell was rancid. I wanted to scream. Instead, I grabbed a marker and wrote in huge letters on the fridge, "Clean up the damn trash in the hallway." The next morning, Lena stormed into the kitchen. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, pointing at the note. "It's the truth," I snapped. "Do you know how it feels to crawl through rotten garbage because you two are too lazy to take out the trash?" She crossed her arms. "You don't have to talk to me like that." "That's rude as hell, rude. Rude is me dragging my body through dog shit and trash juice because you can't do the bare minimum." But she didn't care. To her, the problem wasn't the filth. It was me calling her out. Then came the bathroom. Her long black hair clogged the drain constantly. Every shower, it coated the walls, the tiles, the tub. I'd ask her to clean it. Every time she'd just smile. Oops, forgot. I'd spend half my showers peeling her hair off my legs, gagging as it stuck to me. And while all this was happening, her boyfriend lost his job. Bills stopped being paid. Electricity, internet, gas. Guess who covered everything? Me. "I'll give you my share next week," he'd say. Every single week. I started keeping photos of the receipts just to remind myself I wasn't crazy. But the tension in that house could have snapped steel, and then Lena's mother showed up. One afternoon, I got home and she was just there, sitting in the guest room. "Oh, don't mind me," she said with a smile too wide to be kind. "I'll just be staying here for a little while." But a little while turned into 4 months. No rent, no bills, no help. Just another body in the house taking up space, using up resources, and acting like she owned the place. The breaking point came when I told them I was moving out. "I'll be taking my bed with me," I told Lena calmly, her face twisted. "Wait, so where's my mom supposed to sleep then?" "You're seriously gonna do that to her?" "That's cold, girl." I laughed bitterly. "Cold? That's my bed, my house. And your mom doesn't pay a dime. She's lucky I didn't kick her out months ago." That's when Lena's mom snapped. "You ungrateful bitch," she screamed, lunging at me. Before I could react, her hand came crashing down across my face. The force sent me toppling from my chair onto the hardwood floor. Pain exploded through my skull. I tried to crawl, but she was on me in seconds, straddling me, slapping and punching, her nails raking across my skin. I covered my face with my arms as blow after blow landed. My own blood splattered across the floor. "Stop. Mom, stop." I heard Lena shout, but she didn't say, "Don't hurt her." "Number," she said. "Stop. You'll go to jail for hitting a disabled person." That was her concern, not me, not my bleeding face, just jail. Her mother fought like a wild animal, screaming, "Let me at her. She deserves it," as Lena dragged her back. I seized the chance, crawled to my room, locked the door with shaking hands, and called 911. The police came. Her mother was hauled out screaming, still trying to lunge at me as they shoved her into the car. At the hospital, I sat in the ER with my face swollen, bleeding, barely recognizable. And who showed up? Lena and her boyfriend. "Please," Lena begged, "don't press charges." She didn't mean it. "You know how my mom is." And like a fool, I agreed. I regret it every single day. I left the house not long after, loading my clothes, my wheelchair, my dignity, what little was left, into the car. I didn't say a word, just silence. They never paid me back. The landlord billed me for the damages, scratched walls, stained tiles, reeking of dog urine. I refused to pay. That house still sits in my memory, not haunted by ghosts, but by betrayal. A month later, Lena sent me one last text. "You didn't have to make such a big deal out of it." I stared at it, anger boiling through me, then typed back, "Rot in hell. Don't ever contact me again or I swear you'll regret it." Blocked her number. Never saw her again. The last I heard, she, her worthless boyfriend, and her psychotic mother moved in with her aunt. Poor woman, she has no idea what's waiting for her. I never thought much about the place I worked. It was just a tech office in downtown Raleigh, one of those glass box buildings that looked fancier from the outside than it ever felt inside. The kind of place where the carpet smelled like burned coffee, everyone microwaved leftover spaghetti, and the AC hummed so loud it drowned out your own thoughts. My name's Amber Collins, 26 years old, customer success associate. Not glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me health insurance, so I kept showing up 5 days a week. I grew up 2 hours away in a small town where everybody knew everybody, so when I moved here after college, the city still felt a little too big, a little too fast. I missed the comfort of small-town predictability, but at the same time I liked being anonymous. Or at least I thought I did. I didn't have many close friends in the office. I got along fine with the marketing girls, Grabbed lunch with a few people when schedules matched, but most of the time I kept to myself. The only constant was Derek Hall, a quiet guy from IT who sometimes gave me rides home. We weren't friends, not really, just carpool buddies. Derek was the kind of man you barely noticed, always in the same gray hoodie, hair a little too long, eyes glued to his phone. He didn't talk much, which worked for me after a long day at work. That's the setup. Nothing exciting, nothing dramatic, just life. Until the note. It was a Wednesday. Halfway through a week, I already wanted to be over. I slid into my desk with my cup of gas station coffee, dropped my bag, and went to boot up my computer. That's when I saw it. A folded piece of paper tucked just under my keyboard. No fancy stationery, just plain white printer paper. 4 words, written carefully in blue pen. You are incredibly beautiful. That's it. No name, no doodle hearts, no clue where it came from. At first I laughed, not because it was flattering, but because it seemed so random. Who even does that anymore? A secret admirer note, like it was high school again. I picked it up like it might burn me. Okay, secret admirer, I muttered under my breath, smirking. It didn't bother me. If anything, it felt kind of sweet in a cheesy way. Later that evening, I climbed into Derek's Honda Civic for our usual ride home. He always drove like he was late to something even when he wasn't, knuckles pale on the steering wheel. You won't believe what I found today, I said, buckling my seatbelt. He flicked his eyes toward me, then back to the road. What's that? Somebody left me a love note. Like literally folded paper under my keyboard. 4 words. You are incredibly beautiful. Can you imagine? He didn't laugh, didn't even smile. His jaw tightened, and his hands gripped the wheel harder. Did you tell HR? His voice was flat. I blinked. What? No, why would I? It's not a big deal. You should report it, he said, still staring straight ahead. Come on, I nudged, half teasing. Was it you? Be honest, but he stayed silent. The whole ride, he didn't say another word. At the time, I brushed it off. Derek was always weird, always serious. Maybe he thought I was being careless. I didn't think much of it. The next week, my manager, Mr. Whitman, pulled me into a conference room with one of the HR ladies. Amber, Whitman said carefully, folding his hands. We're looking into a situation and need to ask if Derek Hall has ever made you feel uncomfortable. The question hit me like cold water. Derek? No, I mean, he's kind of quiet, but no. The HR rep, a woman named Linda, leaned forward. We're not asking you to accuse him of anything. We just need to know if he's ever crossed a line with you. No, I repeated, though suddenly I felt uneasy. Why? They exchanged a look I didn't like. We can't share details right now, Linda said. But if anything unusual happens, you come to us immediately. Understand? I nodded, but my stomach twisted. That night, Sophie Ramirez from accounting messaged me on Teams. Did Whitman talk to you about Derek? Yeah, I typed back. Why? Her typing bubbles appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Then, he used to give me rides too. Then he started showing up at my gym, at my yoga class, everywhere. My neighbor caught him parked on my street one night. Hours, just sitting in his car. I stared at my screen. My hands were clammy. Please tell me you're kidding, I typed. I wish I was, she replied. The real nightmare came the following Monday. We were in the big glass conference room, 20 of us crowded around laptops and projectors. Mr. Whitman asked Derek to share a client report. Derek plugged in his USB, pulled up a folder, and clicked the wrong file. The screen filled with a video. At first it looked like porn, but then my blood froze. It was Sophie and Derek. Not really them, but close enough that the room went dead silent. Their faces, their movements, realistic in that disturbing, AI-generated way, grotesque scenes, violent even. Derek lunged for the keyboard, slamming escape, but the computer lagged. For 5 long seconds, everyone saw everything. Mr. Whitman yanked the HDMI cord out. Security stormed in within minutes. They pulled Derek out without letting him speak. The room was buzzing, fear, disgust, whispers. HR made us sign paperwork before we left, swearing confidentiality. An isolated incident, they called it, but it wasn't. A week later, I got an anonymous email. No subject line, just one sentence in the body. You laughed. Now you'll see how much fun it really is. Attached was a file. I didn't open it, couldn't, but someone from legal did, and then I saw their face pale. "It's you," they whispered. I didn't need to hear more. Days later, when I thought maybe it was all dying down, I opened my mailbox outside my apartment. A folded paper. Plain. You always thought I wasn't worthy. No envelope, no address, just sitting there. That one broke me. Because it meant he knew where I lived. From then on, I lived paranoid. Every car parked too long on my street made my pulse spike. Every shadow outside my window made me freeze. HR said Derek had disappeared. Police weren't sharing details. Nobody knew if he was in jail, on the run, or something worse. All I know is I never saw him again. But sometimes, when I log into my laptop late at night, I swear I hear the faint hum of a notification. Like someone somewhere is watching. Because monsters don't always hide under your bed. Sometimes they hold open the office door for you, drive you home, sit 2 desks away, and you don't realize until it's too late that they've already decided your story belongs to them. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who looks back at my 20s with a knot in my stomach. Most people talk about those years like they're golden. Cheap apartments, late-night drives, friends who feel like family. For me, it's the years I wish I could forget. My name is Julia, and I'm 26 now. But this started when I was 21. Back then, I had nothing figured out. I dropped out of college after 1 semester because tuition crushed me. And instead of chasing the journalism dream I once had, I ended up working shifts at a diner on the edge of town. It was the kind of place that smelled like burnt bacon no matter what time you walked in, and the regulars always left a quarter tip like it was some kind of joke. I lived in a shoebox apartment off Cedar Street. Peeling paint, a noisy radiator, and neighbors who screamed at each other so much I didn't even need Netflix. But I kept telling myself it was temporary. I'd save up, go back to school, maybe get out of Ohio. Then came the reunion. It wasn't an official high school reunion. It was just one of those Facebook-invited things. A bunch of people I used to know decided we should all meet up at a bar one Friday night. At first, I scrolled right past the invite. High school hadn't exactly been my golden years. But then I saw a name. Rachel Miller. That name hit me like a punch to the gut. Rachel had been my best friend all through middle school and most of high school. We were inseparable. The kind of girls who shared clothes, secrets, and daydreams about leaving town for something bigger. But then junior year hit, and something shifted. She got involved with a new crowd, the kind of kids who thought skipping class to drink in the cemetery was the peak of rebellion. I stuck with her at first, but eventually it felt like she was more interested in tearing people down than building me up. By senior year, we barely spoke. Still, seeing her name stirred something. Nostalgia, curiosity, maybe even loneliness. Against my better judgment, I clicked going. The night of the meetup, the bar was crowded and smelled like cheap beer and cologne. Everyone looked a little older, a little heavier, a little more tired. I was nursing a watered-down rum and coke when I saw her. Rachel. She hadn't changed much. Same long dark hair, same sharp smile that made you feel like she was always in on a secret you weren't. She spotted me almost immediately. "Jules?" she said, her eyes wide. Nobody had called me that in years. "Rachel," I said, forcing a smile. "Wow, it's been forever." She hugged me. Tight. Too tight. And in that moment, it was like we were 16 again, cutting class to sit on the football bleachers and gossip about boys. We spent most of the night catching up. She told me she was living in a rental house not far from where we grew up. working part-time at some boutique and freelancing online. She laughed when she said freelancing like it wasn't much. She asked about me and I admitted the truth. I was stuck waitressing, barely scraping by. Her eyes softened. You always deserved more, Jules. You were the smart one that hit me. No one had called me smart in a long time. By the end of the night, I was a little drunk and a little high on nostalgia. When Rachel asked if I wanted to hang out sometime, I said yes. At first, it felt good. We started seeing each other once or twice a week, grabbing coffee, driving around like old times, sitting in her living room talking until way too late. She had this way of making everything feel exciting, like we were still kids dreaming up adventures. But there was always this edge to her, the way she looked at people, the sharpness in her jokes, the way she always knew more than she should. One night she leaned back on her couch and said, "You know, I always thought we'd run this town someday." Like nobody could touch us, I laughed nervously. "You always thought we'd be Bonnie and Clyde." "Maybe we still could be," she said, half smiling, half serious. It was a joke, I thought. About 3 weeks into our reunion, she asked me for a favor. "Can you drive me to this guy's house?" she said casually. "It's just across town." I thought nothing of it until we got there. The place was dark, run down, clearly empty. She told me to wait in the car. 10 minutes later, she came back with a backpack, tossed it in the back seat, and said, "Drive." I didn't ask. I should have, but I didn't. Later, when she used the bathroom at my apartment, I peeked inside the backpack. Cash. Wads of it. My stomach dropped. When she came out, she caught me looking. For a moment, her eyes turned cold like I was prey. Then she smiled. "Don't worry about it, Jules. Some people owe me, that's all." "You want in, though?" "I could use a partner," I shook my head. "I can't. I'm not. I don't want to be involved." She just smirked. "That's what you always say. But you're still here." Weeks turned into months, and I couldn't seem to pull away. She had a way of pulling me back, of making me feel like I mattered. She'd buy me dinner, cover my gas, slip me cash when she knew I was short on rent. But every kindness came with a hook. "See, I take care of you," she'd say. "That's what friends do. And someday, maybe you'll take care of me." I kept telling myself I wasn't really involved, that I was just her ride, her listener, her old friend. But deep down, I knew better. The real breaking point came one night when she showed up at my apartment, panicked. "Can I stay here?" "Just for tonight," she said out of breath. "What happened?" "Nothing." "Don't ask. Just please." She slept on my couch, and I tried to ignore the fact that her backpack was heavier than before. The next morning, I woke up to find her sitting at my kitchen table, drinking my coffee like she owned the place. "You know," she said, "you're the only person I can really trust. Everyone else, they'd sell me out, but you're solid." I didn't know what to say. My hands shook around my mug. Then she leaned closer. "And I know you, Jules. You think you're better than me, but you're not. You've got just as much darkness in you. You just hide it better." I tried to laugh it off, but her eyes were too steady, too sharp. That was the first time I realized I wasn't her friend. I was her project. It all came crashing down the night she asked me to drive her again. I said no. I don't even remember the excuse I gave. Work, exhaustion, whatever. But she didn't take it well. Her smile faded. "You're not going to flake on me, are you?" I can't keep doing this, Rachel. I don't even know what you're involved in, and honestly, I don't want to." For a long moment, she just stared at me. Then she leaned back and laughed softly. "You think you get to walk away?" "Rachel, I covered your rent last month. I bought your groceries when you were broke. You think that was free? You owe me." Her words were a knife, because she was right. I had let myself depend on her, and now I was trapped. The last time I saw her was 2 weeks later. She showed up at the diner where I worked, slid into a booth like any normal customer, except her eyes were different. harder. She ordered coffee, black. When I brought it over, she held my wrist just a little too tight. "You're not answering my calls," she said. "I've been busy. Don't lie to me." Her grip tightened, nails digging into my skin. "You think you can cut me off? After everything? You wouldn't even be standing here if it weren't for me." I yanked my hand free, my voice shaking. "We're done, Rachel. I can't do this anymore." Her smile returned, slow and chilling. "We'll see." Then she stood, left a 20 on the table, and walked out. I never saw her again after that night. But sometimes, late at night, I swear I see her car parked across the street from my apartment. Sometimes my phone buzzes with an unknown number, and when I answer, there's only silence. I don't know if she's still out there waiting, or if she's already moved on to someone else. All I know is that when you let an old friend back into your life, sometimes you're not inviting in nostalgia. Sometimes you're inviting in your worst nightmare. I never thought one memory from childhood would stick with me this way, but it did. I'm in my 30s now, with 2 kids of my own, and every time I drop them off at school, I get this little chill at the back of my neck. It takes me straight back to a spring afternoon when I was 5 years old, standing on the cracked blacktop of my elementary school's playground, watching something that I didn't fully understand until years later. Back then, my world was small. School, my parents, the neighborhood kids, and my best friend Aaron. He was a year older than me, a wiry 6-year-old who always seemed to have the better toys, the cooler sneakers, and the bolder ideas. If I was the cautious one, Aaron was the daredevil, the kind of kid who climbed too high on the jungle gym and laughed when the teacher yelled. We went to Ridgeview Elementary, a low brick building in a quiet Midwestern town. The school itself was L-shaped, with the longer side housing the classrooms and the short wing mostly unused, old art rooms and dusty storage. The road curved around it, and parents parked along the side or behind the short end to pick up their kids. It was the kind of school where the paint peeled, the swings squeaked, and recess meant a sea of kids running wild, teachers trying to herd them like cats. For me, recess was usually the best part of the day. But on this particular day, things felt different because Aaron had done something that made me furious. He'd stolen my colored pens. Now, that might not sound like much, but when you're 5, your colored pens are a big deal. My mom had bought me that pack, 12 colors, smooth tips, bright as candy wrappers. I kept them in my desk like treasure. Aaron had slipped them out during math and used them to draw some goofy cartoon on his worksheet. I remember the heat rising in my face when I saw him doodling with my pens. "Those are mine," I whispered across the aisle. He smirked. "Not anymore." I clenched my fists. He always thought he could get away with stuff because he was older, cooler, faster. And usually he did. But this time, I swore to myself I'd get him back. So when recess rolled around, I had revenge on my mind. The blacktop was crowded with kids. The teachers stood in little clusters, sipping coffee out of styrofoam cups, not paying much attention. Aaron wandered toward the far side of the building, near the short, unused wing. At first, I thought he was sneaking off to do something fun, maybe try to climb the fence or hunt for lost baseballs in the grass. Curious and still angry, I followed him. When I rounded the corner, though, I froze. Aaron wasn't alone. A car was idling near the edge of the lot, a beat-up sedan, blue paint flaking under the sun. The passenger door was open, and sitting inside was a man I didn't recognize. His hair was greasy, a cap pulled low. He leaned across the seat, holding something out. Candy. At least that's what it looked like to me. A little plastic-wrapped bar glinting in his hand. "Hey, buddy," the man said, voice low and coaxing. "You want some? Got a whole box in here." Aaron stopped just short of the curb, his eyes wide. He was listening. I was maybe 2 yards away, hidden just around the corner of the building, peeking out. At 5, I didn't understand danger the way adults do. I wasn't thinking about kidnappers or crimes. What confused me was why the man didn't just step out of the car and hand Aaron the candy. Instead, he kept gesturing for Aaron to come closer. "Come on," the man coaxed. "Hop in real quick, I'll give you more." Aaron took another step forward onto the gravel. Something sharp and mean twisted in my little kid brain. This was my chance. I could ruin it for him. I could make him mad the way he'd made me mad. I stuck out my tongue, then shouted loud enough to make him turn. "Hey, Mrs. Turner's calling you. She said if you don't come back right now, she's gonna tell your mom you went outside the schoolyard." Aaron spun around, scowling. "Shut up, Liam," he hissed. "You're just jealous 'cause he likes me and not you." I grinned smugly, knowing I'd struck a nerve. "Teacher! Teacher!" I called in a sing-song voice just to needle him. That's when I noticed something strange. The man in the car snapped the passenger door shut so fast it made a dull thud. Another man, one I hadn't seen before, sat up in the driver's seat and jammed the gear shift. The car lurched backward, gravel crunching under the tires. Aaron whirled around just in time to see the sedan speeding off. His face twisted with anger. At me. "You scared him away," he shouted, fists clenched. "He was giving me cookies. You ruined it." I burst out laughing, my 5-year-old brain too wrapped up in my victory to see what had almost happened. "Cry, baby," I taunted, sticking out my tongue again. Aaron's anger flared. He lunged toward me, shouting that he was gonna hit me. I squealed and bolted, tearing across the playground while he chased after me. That's when a teacher intervened. Mrs. Turner, her sunglasses sliding down her nose, stepped between us. "Boys, enough," she snapped. "What on earth is going on?" "He scared off the candy man," Aaron blurted, furious tears brimming in his eyes. "He was giving me cookies and Liam scared him off." Mrs. Turner's expression changed instantly. Her eyes widened, her face drained of color. "What did you just say?" she asked slowly. Aaron, sniffling, repeated it, pointing toward the lot. Mrs. Turner didn't waste a second. She blew her whistle so hard it echoed off the brick walls. "Everybody inside," she barked, waving her arms. "Now, line up, move." Confused murmurs rippled through the kids. Some groaned, thinking recess was cut short. I thought maybe she was mad at me for tattling, but as she herded us inside, her face was set in this look I'd never seen before. Tight, scared, serious. Inside, she closed the classroom blinds and made us sit on the rug. "Listen carefully," she said, her voice trembling just a little. "If anyone you don't know ever talks to you outside this school, you do not go with them. You do not take candy, cookies, toys, anything. You run, you find a teacher. Do you understand?" A murmur of yes drifted back. That night, our parents got phone calls. The next morning, there was a meeting in the gym. I remember my mom's hand squeezing mine tighter than usual. From that day on, Ridgeview Elementary had a security guard parked near the lot. Nobody was allowed near that side of the building anymore. At the time, I didn't grasp it. I thought it was all because of my silly revenge prank. But as the years passed, the memory shifted. I realized how close Aaron had come to stepping into that car. How close he had come to never coming back. And the part that still rattles me, the part that makes me shudder as a father now, is how easily it could have been me. All because of colored pens. I hadn't seen Kevin in almost 12 years when he suddenly reached out to me. Back in high school, Kevin and I had been best friends. We were inseparable football games, late-night Taco Bell runs, sleepovers where we stayed up talking about music, girls, and the kind of dumb dreams teenagers have when they think life is just waiting to be conquered. But after graduation, life took us different directions. I stayed in town for community college, then started working at a construction supply company. Kevin left right away, said he wanted out of our small Ohio town for good. I heard he went down south, bounced around jobs, even got into some trouble, though no one really knew the details. So when I got a Facebook message from him out of nowhere, it was strange. "Hey man, long time. You free to grab a beer this weekend?" I stared at the message for a good 10 minutes before answering. Kevin wasn't the type to keep in touch, and after 12 years of silence, I figured he'd either forgotten about me or decided I wasn't worth remembering. But something in me felt that old loyalty spark. We had been close once, closer than brothers in some ways. Yeah, I finally typed back. Let's catch up. We picked a bar on the edge of town, one of those places that always smelled like spilled Bud Light and fryer grease. When I walked in Saturday night, Kevin was already there, sitting in a booth by the window. The years had changed him. He was thinner than I remembered, with sharp cheekbones and tired eyes. His hairline had receded and his skin was pale, like he hadn't seen the sun in months. But when he grinned and stood up, it was the same Kevin smile I remembered from when we were 16. "Holy shit, man," he said, pulling me into a hug. "It's been forever." "No kidding," I said, laughing. "Thought you fell off the map." We ordered beers, wings, and fries, and for a while it felt like no time had passed. We swapped old stories, laughed about teachers we hated, even teased each other about the girls we used to crush on. But as the night went on, Kevin's tone shifted. He started asking weird questions. "You ever see things at night? Like when you're half asleep?" He said, lowering his voice. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Like shadows moving in your room? Or somebody standing in the corner, watching?" I chuckled nervously. "You mean like night terrors? Sleep paralysis?" Kevin shook his head, eyes darting to the window. "No, man. Real. Like real people. People who shouldn't be there." I stared at him, not sure if he was messing with me or serious. "Kev, you good? You on something?" He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. Nah, I'm good. Just been seeing stuff lately. Thought maybe I was going nuts, but figured I'd ask you." The rest of the night got stranger. He kept circling back to the topic shadows, noises in the walls, the sense of being followed. When I asked what he'd been doing all these years, he avoided the question. All he'd say was, "Been moving around, couldn't stay in one place too long." When we finally left the bar, Kevin grabbed my arm. His hand was ice cold. "Come by tomorrow," he said. "I'm staying at the old Miller house, out by the woods. You know the one." I froze. The Miller house had been abandoned since we were kids. People used to dare each other to break in at night, but nobody ever did. It was 2 stories of rotting wood, busted windows and graffiti, with vines crawling up the sides. Local kids swore it was haunted. "Why the hell are you staying there?" I asked. "Cheap," Kevin said with a smirk. "And quiet. Come by. We'll hang out, just like old times." I hesitated but eventually nodded. Maybe I was curious. Maybe I just wanted to see what the hell had happened to my old friend. The next night, I drove out there. The road was cracked, lined with trees that seemed to lean in closer the farther I went. The Miller house loomed ahead, dark and broken, except for a faint glow in one upstairs window. When Kevin opened the door, the smell hit me first. Musty, damp, like mold and old wood. He had a mattress on the floor, a couple of folding chairs, and a lantern for light. "Welcome to Casa de Creepy," he said with a laugh, handing me a beer. I tried to play it cool, but the place gave me chills. Every creak of the floorboards echoed. The wallpaper was peeling, and the air felt heavy, like the house was holding its breath. "So what's really going on, Kev?" I asked after we sat down. "You hiding from someone?" He looked me dead in the eye. "Not someone. Something." I laughed, waiting for him to grin, to admit he was messing with me. But he didn't. "You remember when we were kids?" he said slowly. "And we used to talk about the shadows in the woods?" "Yeah, like campfire bullshit. Ghost stories." "They weren't stories," Kevin whispered. "They were real. And they've been following me." I shifted uncomfortably. "You're serious?" "Dead serious, you'll see. Just stay here tonight. You'll see I'm not lying." I wanted to tell him he was full of shit, but something in his voice stopped me. Around midnight, I started hearing it. At first it was soft like a tapping at the windows, barely audible over the crickets. Kevin's face went pale. He put his finger to his lips. The tapping grew louder. Then came the footsteps. Heavy, dragging, circling the house. I tried to convince myself it was animals, maybe raccoons or deer. But then I heard the whispering, faint, like someone just outside the wall. Words I couldn't make out. Kevin grabbed my arm, his grip shaking. "They found me," he muttered. "I told you." I stood up, heart pounding. "Who the hell is out there?" Kevin shook his head violently. "Not who. What?" The whispering moved to the door, then stopped. The silence was worse than the sound. Suddenly the lantern flickered and went out. I swear to God. I felt a cold hand brush my shoulder in the dark. Kevin screamed. When I finally fumbled my phone out and turned on the flashlight, Kevin was gone. The door was still locked. No sound of anyone running outside. Just me, alone in the rotting house, with my breath coming out in clouds even though it was June. I searched for Kevin for hours that night. Called his name until my throat was raw. Checked every room, every closet, even the basement that smelled like something dead had been rotting there for years. He was nowhere. When the sun finally came up, I drove straight to the sheriff's office and told them everything. They searched the Miller house, the woods, the road. No sign of Kevin. It was like he'd never been there. The only thing they found was his wallet on the mattress, with his ID still inside. The sheriff looked at me like I was crazy. "You sure you didn't imagine it? Maybe too much beer?" I swore up and down I hadn't. But the more I insisted, the less they believed me. That was 3 years ago. Kevin's never been found. No missing person report. No family coming forward. It's like his whole life was erased. But sometimes, when I'm driving home late at night, I see him, standing on the side of the road, pale, with those same tired eyes, watching me. And every time I look in the rearview mirror, there's a second shadow in the back seat. I was 11 the first time I thought something was seriously wrong in that house. Back then, it was just me, my mom, and my little brother, Jamie. We lived in a small rental on the edge of a quiet town in Ohio. It wasn't anything fancy, 2 bedrooms, a cramped kitchen, a sagging front porch, but it was what my mom could afford after the divorce. The street itself was safe enough. Kids rode bikes in the summer, neighbors sat on their lawns drinking beer, and the biggest drama was whether the school bus was late. But the house had a way of making you feel watched. My mom always chalked it up to the fact that it was old, built in the 50s, creaky as hell. She'd say, "Old houses settle, they make noise, pipes groan, floors expand." She had a reason for everything. But even at that age, I knew some of the things that happened inside those walls weren't just house noises. They were different. We moved in at the start of September, just as school was starting. She was tough, quick with her words, and exhausted most of the time. But she always put us first. My brother Jamie was 7, then wild, messy, and always talking to himself while he played with his action figures. I didn't hate the new house, not at first. It smelled like dust and mothballs, but it had a backyard, and the landlord let us keep our cat, Tiger. For me, that was a win. What stuck with me, though, was the neighbor. The day we moved in, a man in his late 50s shuffled over from the house 2 doors down. His name was Walter, but everyone on the street called him Walt. He was friendly enough, said if we ever needed tools or help with the yard, just holler. Then he looked right at me and said, "You kids be careful in that place. Funny things happen there." My mom laughed it off and thanked him. But I remember the way he stared past her at the front door, like he was remembering something. The first night I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed staring at the glow in the dark stars I had stuck to the ceiling, listening to the wind rattle the trees outside my window. Shadows danced across the walls, swaying in time with the branches. But one shadow didn't move. It was in the corner by my toy chest. At first, I thought it was just a pile of clothes, or maybe the big stuffed bear my aunt gave me. But when I blinked, the shape was gone. I felt this cold run through me, not the kind where the room is chilly, but the kind that seeps inside your bones. I pulled the blanket over my head and prayed for sleep. When I woke the next morning, my toy chest was standing wide open. I never left it open, because if toys spilled out, my mom would yell. I shut it quietly before she came in, but I knew deep down I hadn't touched it. Jamie's friend. A few weeks later, Jamie started saying weird things. We were eating cereal before school when he told Mom, casual as anything, "I don't like the man in the closet." Mom froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. "What man, honey?" "The one who talks to me," Jamie said, chewing like it was no big deal. "He whispers, but I can't hear what he says." Mom gave me a look like, "Don't encourage this," then turned back to Jamie. "Sweetie, closets don't have men in them. You just had a dream." But I saw Jamie's face. He wasn't making it up. That night, I lay awake listening. Sure enough, I heard it, a dragging sound, slow and deliberate, across my bedroom floor, like fingernails on wood. It stopped right beside my bed. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I just squeezed my eyes shut until I passed out from sheer terror. In the morning, there were scratches on the floor, deep and fresh, right next to where I slept. I ran to show Mom. She got mad. "You must have dragged something sharp, or moved the dresser around. Quit making up stories." I swore up and down I didn't, but she didn't believe me. It kept happening. Some nights I'd hear whispers, like a radio turned low, coming from my closet. Other nights Jamie would scream, and when I ran into his room, he'd be pointing at the corner, yelling, "He's there! He's there!" I never saw him, but I felt him. That crawling sensation on the back of your neck when someone's eyes are on you. One night in December, I woke to find my bedroom door wide open. I always shut it. Always. The hallway light Mom left on for us was out, dead dark. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, coming down the hall. They stopped right outside my door. The door creaked open and a tall, dark figure leaned in, just the head. No features, just a shape darker than the dark. I wanted to scream for my mom, but my throat locked. I shut my eyes. When I opened them, the door was closed. In the morning, Mom swore she never came into my room. After one especially bad night, Jamie and I told her everything together about the man. The whispers, the footsteps. She looked scared for the first time. She lit a candle and walked through every room, whispering a prayer her mother taught her. For a while, things calmed down, but not for long. One afternoon, I came home before Mom. I was on the couch doing homework when I heard a slam upstairs. It was the toy chest. The thing is, nobody else was home. I froze. My pencil slipped from my hand. Then, slowly, I got up and walked down the hall. My bedroom door was wide open. The toy chest was closed, but all my toys were scattered across the floor, like someone had dug through them. I backed away, heart pounding, and sat on the front steps until Mom got home. When I told her, she blamed the cat, but Tiger was asleep in the laundry basket. Not long after, I was walking home from school when Walt caught up with me. He had a cigarette dangling from his lips and this serious look in his eye. "You seeing things in there yet?" he asked. I froze. "What do you mean?" He took a drag, then flicked the ash. "That house has got a history. Last family didn't stay long. Kids kept saying they saw someone at night. Closet doors opening on their own. Same stuff you're talking about, ain't it?" I didn't answer. He sighed. "Sometimes places hold on to people. Bad people. You just stay sharp, kid." The worst night came in January. Snow piled against the windows, the wind howling. Mom was on a late shift, so it was just me and Jamie. He had fallen asleep on the couch watching cartoons. I carried him to bed, tucked him in, and went back to my room. I don't know how long I slept before I woke up, but the sound was unmistakable. Nails dragging across the floor. I opened my eyes. The tall shadow was crouched by my bed, head tilted, as if listening to my heartbeat. I couldn't scream, couldn't move. Then, slowly, it stood up and backed into the closet. The door shut behind it. When I finally worked up the courage to move, I ran to Jamie's room. He was awake, crying, whispering. He said he's my friend now. Years later, after we moved out, I asked Mom straight out, "Did you ever see anything in that house?" She hesitated. Then she nodded. "Sometimes," she said quietly. I'd wake up and see a shadow standing in my doorway. I didn't tell you kids because I didn't want to scare you. But yes, there was something there, and I think it was a man. Someone who used to live there. She never said more, but I knew. Jamie knew. Even now, as an adult, when the house is quiet and I can't sleep, I swear I still hear it. Those nails dragging across the floor, slow and patient, like an old friend, waiting to be remembered. I never thought moving out of my parents' house would bring me the kind of freedom I had always dreamed of and the kind of fear I never imagined. I was 19 when I left my small hometown in North Carolina and moved to a mid-sized city in Virginia. It wasn't a huge move, just a few hours away, but it felt like stepping into a new world. I was renting a modest 2-bedroom apartment near campus, splitting the rent with my cousin Layla. She was in her final year of nursing school, and I was just starting my pre-law courses at the local university. Growing up, I wasn't the kind of person who had a long list of friends. I usually kept to myself, but there was always one person who seemed to be by my side, Adrian. We'd been friends since middle school, the kind of friendship people thought would last forever. He wasn't the best student, wasn't the kindest soul, but when you're a kid, you don't always see the cracks. We laughed, skipped classes together, shared secrets we thought no one else would understand. By high school, Adrian started changing. He grew bitter, more aggressive. He'd snap at teachers, pick fights over the smallest things, and when it came to girls, he had this possessive streak. I brushed it off as teenage drama, but deep down, I knew there was something off. When he confessed his feelings to me during junior year, I froze. I didn't feel that way about him, and when I told him no, the look on his face scared me more than any fight he'd been in. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed, and he said something I'll never forget. "You'll realize one day, you're mine, no matter how long it takes." I laughed it off back then, but 3 years later, I wasn't laughing anymore. Living in Virginia was good at first. My classes were challenging, but I liked it. The city was busy but not overwhelming. Layla and I lived only a short walk from a small bar where I had picked up a part-time job as a bartender. It was a cozy place, mostly regulars, not the wild college bar scene. I liked it. Life felt normal, safe, until Adrian found me again. I don't even remember telling him I was moving here. But one evening, a few months into the semester, I was walking home from the bar around 11:30 p.m., and I swear I saw someone standing across the street, half hidden by a street lamp. Tall, broad shoulders, hood pulled up. My chest tightened instantly. "Stop it," I whispered to myself. "You're being paranoid." But paranoia has a way of sticking with you. It was a week later when I got the first message. Not on Instagram, not on Facebook, not even on my phone. It was a handwritten note slipped under my apartment door. "You still look the same. I've missed you." I felt the air leave my lungs as I stared at the uneven handwriting. "Layla," I shouted, holding the paper like it was poison. She came out of her room, messy bun on her head, textbook in her hand. "What's wrong?" I showed her the note. She frowned, her nurse brain immediately trying to rationalize. "Maybe it's from a neighbor? Some creep?" "No," I said quickly. My hands were shaking. "It's Adrian." Her face changed. She had heard the stories. She knew the name. "Are you sure?" "I know his handwriting. He used to pass me notes in class. It's him." Layla put a hand on my shoulder. "Then we call the landlord, the cops, something." But part of me didn't want to believe it. It had been years. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was making connections where there weren't any. I tossed the note in the trash. Things didn't stop. They got worse. Sometimes when I'd come home late, I'd hear footsteps behind me, steady and deliberate. When I turned around, nothing. Once, around 2 a.m., I woke to the faint sound of someone jiggling the handle of our balcony door. I froze in bed, staring at the dark outline of the glass. My heart hammering so loud I thought it would wake Layla. The sound stopped after a few seconds, but I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I told myself it was random, just city noises. But I knew better. Then, one night, it happened. It was late January, one of those bitter nights when the wind howled through the cracks in the windows. Layla had a night shift at the hospital, so I was alone. I was curled up on the couch, binge-watching a show. The glow of the TV keeping the apartment from feeling too empty. Around 2:45 a.m., I heard a scraping sound at the balcony window. At first, I thought it was the wind, maybe a loose branch. But then it came again, deliberate this time. A metallic scrape. I muted the TV. My stomach dropped. Slowly, I crept toward the sliding glass door. And that's when I saw him. Adrian. He was crouched on the balcony, a small glass cutter in his hand, dragging it across the corner of the glass pane. He lifted his face just enough for me to see his eyes locked on mine. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt glued to the floor. He grinned. That same grin from high school. The one he'd flash when he got away with something. He mouthed the words through the glass. Told you. That snapped me out of it. I bolted to my room, grabbed my phone, and dialed 911 with trembling fingers. My voice shook as I whispered, "There's someone breaking into my apartment. He's on the balcony. Please hurry." I remembered Layla's words about safety, so I locked my bedroom door from the outside. My uncle had insisted I keep a baseball bat in my closet, just in case, he said. I gripped it with both hands, my knuckles white. From the living room, I heard the faint crack of glass giving way. Then, footsteps. He was inside. Sarah. His voice was low, sing-song, dragging out my name. You knew I'd find you. My chest heaved, every breath shallow. Stay calm, I whispered to myself. Police are coming. Just hold on. He tried the bedroom door, rattled it, pounded once. Come on. Don't play games. We've known each other too long for this. Tears stung my eyes. I tightened my grip on the bat. I don't want to hurt you, he continued, but you made me look like a fool back then. You think you can just walk away? Move states? Live your little life without me? The pounding grew louder. My heart was slamming against my ribs. Then sirens, distant but growing closer. Adrian paused. You called them? His tone snapped, turning sharp. You think they'll save you? No one's saving you from me. He kicked the door hard. Once, twice. The wood groaned. I braced myself, and then shouting, Police, put your hands where we can see them. The pounding stopped. Heavy footsteps retreated toward the balcony. A crash of voices, boots, chaos. I stayed locked in my room until an officer opened the door and found me trembling with the bat still raised. Adrian didn't run. He never tried. Just like his ego always promised, he'd rather be caught than humiliated. The cops tackled him on the balcony, glass shards at his feet. They found notes in his pockets, letters he never delivered, all saying the same thing. You'll be mine. It's been 6 years since that night. Adrian was eventually moved to a psychiatric facility after being deemed unstable. I live in the U.S., still, studying law. Sometimes, when I walk home late, I still feel those phantom footsteps behind me. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still see that grin through the glass. I never thought an old friend of mine would nearly ruin my life. It started out so normal, so harmless, that sometimes I still have trouble believing how it all spiraled down. And I keep asking myself, should I have seen it coming? Should I have walked away earlier? Maybe. Probably. But back then, all I knew was that I didn't want to abandon somebody who clearly didn't have many people left in his corner. His name was Brian Calloway. We met when I was 19. He was a year younger than me, and we both hung around the same small-town circle, hitting up dollar movies on Tuesday nights, eating at the Waffle House after midnight, and wasting entire weekends on PlayStation marathons. He was quiet, funny in a dry way, and always down to hang out. Honestly, he felt like the kind of guy you'd want in your crew. Loyal, dependable, never flaked on plans. But Brian had his quirks. He didn't have many friends outside of me, and depression clung to him like a shadow. He didn't date much either, not from lack of trying, but he was awkward with women and never seemed to get anywhere. I felt for him. I knew what loneliness felt like too. One night at the diner, over greasy hash browns and bottomless coffee, I made a mistake that, looking back, I regret to this day. I brought up the paranormal. You ever look into near-death experiences? I asked, flipping through YouTube on my phone. Some of these stories are wild. That was the hook. And Brian bit down hard. At first it was fun. We'd talk about ghosts, urban legends, UFO sightings, stuff that made 2A, M car rides more interesting. But little by little, that became the only thing Brian wanted to talk about. He'd interrupt conversations, hijack plans, circle back around to it no matter where we started. His whole personality got swallowed up by it. Still, I told myself, he's just passionate. It's a phase. Everyone has phases. I didn't know then that his phase would become an obsession. Things shifted when Brian discovered DMT. He called me late one night, voice buzzing with excitement. "Dude, you ever heard of DMT?" "Yeah," I said cautiously. "That's like the spirit molecule stuff, right?" "Exactly. Bro, I tried it. I saw," he lowered his voice even though no one was around. "I saw this thing. It was like, I don't know, like a goddamn living fractal. It talked to me, told me I was chosen." I laughed nervously. "You sure it wasn't just the drugs?" But Brian was already too far gone. Within weeks he was smoking DMT nearly every day. Then several times a day. He told me he was traveling to other realms, meeting entities, learning ancient truths. I tried to keep him grounded, but it was like trying to hold sand in my hands. It slipped through no matter how tightly I gripped. He'd say things like, "I'm the reincarnation of some Egyptian king. I can see hieroglyphics hidden in street signs. The gods won't let me die until I finish my mission." I wanted to tell him he sounded insane, but he was still my friend. And he didn't have anyone else. His family had written him off as the black sheep. The only one who stuck around was his younger brother, Kyle, who was barely out of high school. One night, I sent Kyle a message on Facebook. "Hey man, I think Brian really needs help. He's not himself. Maybe try to talk him into seeing somebody." Kyle responded with a thumbs up emoji. I doubted he knew how bad it really was. A month later, my girlfriend Rachel convinced me we should meet up with Brian for a walk at Pine Creek Park. "I don't know, Rach," I muttered, lacing my shoes. "He's been acting way too weird lately." "Come on," she said, pulling her hair into a ponytail. "He's your friend. We can hang out for an hour, then grab food. It'll be fine." I reluctantly agreed. Brian was already waiting on a trail bench when we arrived. His eyes lit up when he saw us, but instead of waving, he pulled something from his jacket, a hunting knife. He flipped it around casually, the blade glinting in the afternoon sunday. "Don't freak out," he said quickly when he saw our faces. "I use it for rituals. It keeps the bad thoughts away." Rachel shot me a look. I forced a shaky laugh. "Cool, man. Maybe keep it in the sheath while we walk?" He didn't listen. The entire hike, he waved that knife around like it was part of his storytelling. Sometimes he even mimed stabbing motions into himself. Rachel's hand tightened around mine. I whispered, "Just keep walking. Don't panic." Inside, I was screaming. When we got back to the parking lot, Rachel, in her endless optimism, chirped, "Let's grab lunch together." I wanted to strangle her. My eyes said please no, but she either missed it or ignored it. So there we were, packed into my old Honda, me driving, Rachel in the passenger seat, and Brian in the back. That's when things went from uncomfortable to terrifying. We were crawling through downtown traffic when I heard the click of a seatbelt, then a zipper, then God help me, that unmistakable sound of skin on skin. My stomach dropped. No, please no. I glanced at the rearview mirror, and there it was. Brian, pants halfway down, doing the unthinkable. My grip on the wheel tightened. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to yell, to stop, to do something, but all I could think about was the knife, that knife in his jacket pocket. So I stayed silent. Rachel kept talking beside me, blissfully unaware, going on about work drama. I nodded at the right moments, heart pounding, praying she wouldn't turn around. Finally, we pulled into the restaurant parking lot. Rachel hopped out to grab food, leaving me alone with him. The silence was suffocating. I pretended to scroll on my phone, every muscle in my body on high alert. When Rachel came back, I forced a smile and muttered, "I'm tired. Let's just go home." On the drive back to the park, I tried to steady my breathing. But things weren't done. Not by a long shot. We pulled into the lot where Brian's beat-up sedan was parked. "All right, man," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "This is you." But Brian didn't move. He just sat there, staring. "Yo," I said more firmly. "Time to head out." Finally, he opened the door. Relief washed over me until he didn't walk to his car. Instead, he stepped toward Rachel's side of the vehicle, and then I saw it. He had pulled a gun from his bag, a black 9mm. My blood turned to ice. Rachel froze, eyes wide. I don't know what came over me. Anger, fear, adrenaline, maybe all three. I threw my door open and stormed toward him. "What the hell are you doing, Brian?" I barked. He didn't answer. His hands trembled, tears streaking down his cheeks. His eyes were wild, unfocused. "Get in your car," I ordered, voice shaking. "Go home, right now." For a tense, eternal moment, he stood there, clutching the gun. Then, without a word, he turned, climbed into his car, and drove away. I exhaled so hard I nearly collapsed. Rachel whispered, "We're never seeing him again." "No," I said firmly, "we're not." I cut Brian off completely. Blocked his number, ignored every Facebook message. Sometimes he'd send bizarre, rambling texts from random numbers. Stuff like, "The gods told me you're betraying me. The pyramids are opening. Don't ignore your destiny." I deleted them all. Months later, I got that gut feeling, you know, the one you can't ignore. I messaged his brother, Kyle. "Listen, I don't know if he still has a gun, but if he does, you need to take it away from him. He's not stable." Kyle replied, "I already did. Thanks for the heads up." I felt a little better, until the call came. It was 1:07 a.m. My phone buzzed, waking me, a number from Illinois. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Hello?" A deep voice said, "This is Detective Harris with the Joliet Police Department. Do you know a Brian Calloway?" My chest went cold. "Yeah, why?" There was a pause. Then the detective said words that still echo in my skull. "Your friend was involved in a homicide tonight. He stabbed a man inside an Egyptian museum." I sat there in the dark, sweating, shaking, unable to breathe. The detective asked me some questions, but I barely remember my answers. All I could think was that could have been me. That could have been Rachel. I've never spoken to Brian again. I don't plan to. Sometimes, though, I dream of him sitting in the backseat of my car, knife in hand, eyes unblinking. Or standing outside Rachel's door with that gun. I wonder how close we came to being the victims instead of strangers in Illinois. And the worst part? A tiny voice in my head still whispers, "You should have done more to help him." But then another voice answers, "No. You're just lucky you got away alive." I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everybody knew your last name and most of the houses had porches with chipped paint and squeaky swings. Our street was lined with oak trees so big their roots cracked the sidewalks in places. I was 8 years old then, and the highlight of my afternoons was riding my bike after school. It wasn't much a hand-me-down blue Schwinn with a crooked handlebar and a bell that sometimes stuck, but to me, it felt like freedom. My parents were strict about rules, my mom especially. She'd tell me, "Don't you cross that street without me or your dad, you hear?" And I listened. I never crossed. I rode up and down the same side of the block, memorizing every crack in the cement, every mailbox, every barking dog. There was one house down the block I always noticed. It had a long driveway, wide enough for 2 cars, and a big yard with a fence that leaned a little to the left. The first time I saw the man, I remember it clearly. It was one of those spring days when the air smelled like rain on pavement. He was standing at the end of his driveway, a few feet from the sidewalk, He wore a brown hat, wide-brimmed, with the shadow cutting across his face. "Hey, kid," he said, tipping the brim of his hat. I slowed my bike, half nervous, half curious. "Hey," I answered back, careful not to stop too close. "Nice ride you got there," he said, nodding at my Schwinn. "Fast, huh?" I grinned a little. "Yeah, kinda," he chuckled. "Bet you could beat me to the corner if you tried." I shook my head. "My mom says no racing in the street." "Smart mom," he replied, smiling. "One day, though." After that, I started to expect him. Most afternoons, he'd be there, hat on, standing in the same spot like it was his duty. He never stepped onto the sidewalk, never came closer. He'd just talk across that invisible line between driveway and street. Sometimes he asked about school. "How's third grade treating you?" "Fine," I'd answer. "Got a favorite subject?" "Recess." He'd laugh every time, like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. He knew little things about me too. "That your little brother I saw out front yesterday?" he asked once. I was surprised. I never mentioned my brother to him. But maybe he'd just seen us playing in the yard. Another time, he said, "Your dad got a new car, huh? Looks sharp." I hadn't told him, but sure, the old Buick had been traded for a Ford. I figured neighbors noticed stuff. Nothing weird about that. Over time, I grew to like seeing him. I'd ring my bell when I rode past, and he'd tip his hat. Sometimes he told me short stories, the kind old men like to tell, about a dog that always brought the same slipper back, or a robin that perched on his fence every morning at the same time. It was simple, harmless, or at least I thought so. Weeks went by, then one afternoon, he wasn't there. I coasted down the block slow, expecting him to step out, but the driveway was empty, curtains drawn in the windows. I frowned, circled the block, came back. The next day, same thing. After nearly a week, I finally saw someone, but not him. A woman was in the backyard, watering plants. She wore a faded sundress and her hair was tied back. I stopped at the corner, watching, too nervous to yell out. She didn't notice me. A few days later, I worked up the nerve. My heart thumped as I checked that no one was watching from my own house. Then I pedaled hard and shot across the forbidden street. My tires crunched gravel at the end of that long driveway. The woman looked up from her garden, surprised. "Well, hello," she said, wiping her hands. "What are you doing over here?" I shifted on my bike. I used to talk to the man who stood here. He wore a hat. He said hi to me every day." She frowned a little, tilting her head. "A man with a hat?" "Yes. He knew my name. He told me stories sometimes. He said maybe one day we'd race to the corner." Her face softened, but not in a comforting way, more like pity. She set the watering can down. "Sweetheart, that sounds like my husband, but he passed away last year." I blinked. "No, he was just here. He said hi every day." She shook her head slowly. "My husband's name was Walter. He loved this yard. He always wore his hat when he stood outside, but he had a scar on his cheek here." She touched her own face, from ear to mouth. "He'd had it since he was a boy." My stomach tightened. The man I saw, he didn't have a scar. His face had been plain, smooth. Do you have a picture?" I asked quietly. She went inside. A minute later, she came back holding a framed photo. A man stood in front of the same house, smiling, hat tipped back. It was him, the hat, the smile, but across his cheek was a pale scar, thin but sharp. I stared at it. My mouth went dry. The man I saw didn't have that. I whispered. Her eyebrows pinched together. "Honey, nobody's been standing in that driveway. I've been here since summer. If there was someone out here, I'd know." I backed away, muttering thanks, my bike wobbling as I pedaled off. My chest felt cold, like I'd swallowed ice. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, replaying the sound of his laugh, the way he said my name. A week later, something happened that I still can't shake. It was raining lightly that night. tapping against my window. I woke to a voice calling my name. At first, I thought it was a dream, but then it came again. A low, steady call from right outside. "Kid." I froze, covers pulled to my chin. The voice was exactly how he used to say it, warm, familiar, but stretched thin in the rain. I screamed for my mom. She ran in, worried. I told her someone was outside my window. She pulled up the blinds. Nothing there, just wet grass and the shadow of the oak tree. My dad got up, checked the locks, even went outside with a flashlight. "Nobody's out here," he said firmly. But I knew what I heard. I knew that voice. The years went by. I stopped riding past that house, stopped talking about it. We moved away when I was in high school, but the memory never left me. Even now, as an adult, whenever I drive through that old neighborhood, I can't help but slow down near that corner. The driveway looks different, new cars, new paint, but I still see it. The hat, the smile, the wave, and sometimes when it rains at night, I swear I still hear my name being called from outside.